This is Brooks Raiford. I'm president of the North Carolina Technology Association, or NC Tech, and I'd like to welcome you to this episode of NC Tech Talk. Thanks to our partnership with Cisco and their WebEx platform, we are recording today's conversation, and we'll send you a link to it in our follow-up. Because of a few difficulties with video, you can just hear me today, which is your advantage, but I'll do my best to keep up with things as we move along. NC Tech has been incorporating virtual sessions as part of our overall programming, including this NC Tech Talk series, where we engage with key leaders from across North Carolina to talk about what's on their mind and how their organization is adapting to today's environment. North Carolina has become a significant player in the tech sector, and one organization that has been a major force in the state's tech growth has been IBM, which has their second largest site here in the Triangle. I'm very pleased today to have Tim Humphrey, North Carolina's site leader for IBM, here with us to talk a bit about how they are managing through our current circumstances and what the future looks like for them. Our format today will start with some welcoming remarks from our sponsor, and then I will take it from there and ask Tim several prepared questions. We invite you to use the Q&A function to submit additional questions for Tim, and I'll do my best to filter those and pose them throughout today's discussion. Note that there is a separate chat function. Please only use that if you have technical problems or questions, and my fellow staff members will respond to those. We also ask that everyone mute your audio unless you're speaking, and we encourage you to select the speaker view option so that you'll see a fuller screen of whoever's speaking. To kick things off, I'd like to thank the sponsor for today's session, Walk West, and invite their partner and Vice President of Professional Development and PR, Sharon Delaney McLeod, to say a few words of welcome. Sharon?
Thanks very much, Brooks. We're excited to be here with everyone today. At Walk West, we're proud to partner with tech companies here in North Carolina and beyond to help share your stories in meaningful ways that impact your business. From our work with organizations like Cisco, Lenovo, Toshiba, NC State, UNC Health, and the North Carolina State Fair, plus many more, we know that technology touches every industry and every part of our lives. We strive to bring the strategic thinking of a consultancy and at the same time, a roll-up-your-sleeves approach to execute work in collaboration with our clients. We believe in charting new territory and innovating with our clients, like the new endeavor we're leading with LCI Tech to bring digital accessibility and equity to the marketplace. Another example is our recent launch of the Diversity Movement, a robust initiative where we establish diversity and inclusion as a key element of an organization's DNA, whether it's a startup or enterprise level. Our certified diversity executives create D&I roadmaps to define goals and objectives that develop cultural competence for leaders and their teams. So thanks again so much for the opportunity to be a part of today's Tech Talk. We look forward to connecting with you all soon.
Great. Thank you, Sharon, very much, and thank you for Walk West's support in collaboration with NC Tech. Again, I'm especially pleased to have as our featured guest today, Tim Humphrey. Tim is Vice President, IBM Chief Data Office, with a mission to deliver a trusted enterprise-wide data and AI platform for transforming IBM. He is also the Senior State Executive for IBM in North Carolina and the Senior Location Executive for IBM in Research Triangle Park. Tim is very active in the community, serving several local nonprofits in a variety of capacities, and he's very active as a mentor to over 30 global professionals, students, and youth. He graduated from NC State University with a degree in electrical engineering and is a member of the NC State Electrical and Computer Engineering Hall of Fame. Tim, thank you very much for making the time for us today, and welcome to NC Tech Talk.
Hey, thank you, Brooks. It's great to be here, and let me just start off by saying a big thank you to NC Tech, you and your team here. A big thank you to Walk West for sponsoring this, and a big thank you to Cisco for giving us such a great platform here.
Well, thank you very much. Glad that you could be with us. As everybody hopefully knows, we're broadcasting this session live on June the 10th, and we will share the recording in our video library for future viewing. So I wanted to acknowledge the issue that's gripping the country and really the world right now, which is the death of George Floyd and the underlying issue of how minorities are treated by law enforcement and by society at large. You've been leading some discussions internally about this, and you've written some online posts. I'd just like to take a moment here at the start to invite you to share any thoughts and observations that you have.
Yeah, Brooks, this subject is very, very personal to me. I have done a lot of reaching out to people, holding dialogue, looking for actions that I can take individually, actions that IBM can take as a company, and actions that our business and technology community can take to start to really tackle some of these systemic problems that we have in our society. You know, these senseless murders that have happened, they really hit home for me as somebody who happens to be Black and living in America. You know, I have several stories of run-ins with the police where I was going about my law-abiding citizen routine, my daily routines. I had run-ins with the police that could have ended in tragedy. Luckily, they didn't. I was fortunate enough not to be like George Floyd or Breonna Taylor. So the first point I would say is, the issue, it is real. It does affect all Americans, and Black Americans in particular, happen to be very, happen to have to deal with this issue on a daily basis. And we have to get to a point where we get the inequality, the bias, the prejudice, and the racism, out of the hearts and minds of our society. So look, you mentioned it. I've had a lot of discussions. I want to make sure that all of our employees in IBM feel like IBM is a place where they can show up and bring their whole self to work, where they feel safe, where they can share their feelings. Additionally, like I said in the beginning, I want to make sure we take this time to lead to healthy, positive change. So it's really about actions that we can all take to make things better. We now have a captive audience and society and leaders that are listening and willing to change, and it's something we got to take advantage of. I'll just add on this point that police reform is something that is really needed. Our CEO recently wrote a letter to Congress outlining the need for police reform, the responsible use of technology, and the need to be able to advance the availability of skills and jobs for all people. These are all topics that are near and dear to my heart, and I think are near and dear to most people here in the technology community here in North Carolina. We have a very diverse community here. It's a community that I'm proud of. I think our employers, such as IBM and everybody else, need to make sure that our workforce matches our community. And that's something that, we have to focus on. And I really believe that, we can, emerge from these times stronger if we all focus. So I said a mouthful. I'll pause to let you get some additional thoughts or questions if you have on that topic, Brooke.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I appreciate what you've posted. You've had several online that are public and available to be seen, and you've been having some conversations internally with your team, including, as I understand it, you had a session, perhaps it was virtual, with your RTP site, Black employees, and they really probably look to you even more for leadership than might be ordinarily the case. And so it's impressive how you are tackling that. I want to ask you a related question because it actually ties into some of our programming that you all have helped support in the past. Some years ago, we had the Deputy Chief of Police from Memphis, Tennessee, come and speak at our annual State of Technology Conference. You all are the title sponsor for that and have been for a number of years. And it predates your current role, so I'm not sure if you would have been there or would have heard about that. But the reason he came was IBM works with the department, or was working with the department at the time. And he came to highlight how that department was using data analytics to predict where and when crimes would most likely occur. And that allowed the department to simultaneously be more efficient in their deployment of officers while also reducing crime. You've been commenting lately in some of your online posts that in addition to this use of technology and analytics, the tech sector should drive the effort to use technology to do things like identify patterns that might otherwise go unnoticed in terms of arrests, judicial decisions, institutional decisions, and so forth. So using technology for good, not only for the predictive example I just gave about where crime might occur, how to go be there at the right time to prevent it, but how do we use technology to help us spotlight things we might miss, bias in decision-making, bias in punishment administration, and so forth. Talk a little bit about the role of tech in all of this.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I think I believe in technology for good tech, and I'm sure this community, everybody here on this event, is also behind technology for good. So we have to make sure, one, we use technology responsibly. We all know that while we are all technology geeks and nerds and enthusiasts, when used the wrong way, technology can have bad outcomes, and that's what we have to present. That's what we have to prevent happening. We must make sure technology is not used for things like racial profiling, et cetera. The flip side of that is, really, where can we use technology to make an impact? One small example would be using technology to allow transparency. And we all see it in our business life. The minute you start measuring and you start measuring results, measuring outcomes, and sharing those outcomes, people's behaviors change. So I think that's one of the simplest things we can do is we modernize our government systems, our law enforcement systems, to be able to collect the right data that's needed. And like you said, not just for predicting where crime is going to happen, but also for allowing people to see what is going on, to see behaviors and actions that are both good and bad. Transparency of data starts to bring about a tremendous change. So that is one of the things that I think at the core of this, one of the things we've got to do is enable transparency. And that takes a lot of technology, that takes a lot of modernization of systems, and it takes also changing of processes that go along with these systems, right? I think not only technology has to change, and I talk a lot about that, processes have to change. And last but not least, people have to change. But hopefully, once you start to make data more transparent, it will be the tailwind to make people change.
Great. Well, I do have another question, but the first one is burning in my mind, and I'm sure everyone else's is that your basement or some cool place at IBM?
This is my basement, Brooks. It is my man cave back here that I always dreamed of having. So I work down here quite often.
And by work, you mean poker. I understand.
That too. Although poker games have had to be canceled because you can't social distance and have a poker game.
I understand. Okay. Well, let me get back to serious questions again. Tim, all companies and organizations have had to pivot fairly suddenly in various ways over the past few months. With a site as large as your North Carolina operations in the Triangle, I'm sure that has posed some unique challenges. What do you see? I'm going to ask you two-parter here. What is your greatest success, meaning you've been pleasantly surprised at how well things went in the sudden shift? And then your biggest challenge, what's been the biggest difficulty for you?
Brooks, if we could rewind and I could go back 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, however long ago, and you'd have told me we would quickly have to get all of our workforce productive, working from home, with the exception of a small few that have to maintain systems, do things like accounts receivable, pick up checks, and various other things that you just have to do in person. We'd have to transition, over 95% of our workforce to working from home, and pretty much do that, in the matter of 24 hours. I would have said, it's an impossible challenge. I'm fortunate in that we were prepared. We started monitoring, monitoring the COVID-19 virus at a very early stage. One of the benefits of being part of a global enterprise is we could see what was happening with our colleagues in China, so we did start preparing for that early, and that gave us a head start. And we were able to transition to largely a work from home workforce, and we did that, within 24 hours. And I'd say the biggest success is that we did that with no major hiccups. There were a few small problems, but without disrupting service to our clients, service to other IBMers. And that to me is something that I was very, very proud of. And the other big thing that I've been extremely proud of the team for doing is sort of emerging from this with a renewed sense of employee engagement. Our leaders, this virus affects people. Everybody knows somebody who's affected by COVID-19. Some have had people be sick. Some have had people unfortunately die. So it's personal, and it's caused our leaders, our managers, to relate more to their employees on a personal level, asking them how they're doing, how their families are doing, thus creating more of a personal connection at work, which is something that has been a silver lining here. And then on top of that, the team's done a real good job of moving engagement activities to be virtual. Things like doing a Spirit Week where everybody was asked to wear something that represents your North Carolina pride, whether it was a t-shirt, a hat, a sweatshirt, a scarf, and it represents your favorite city or landmark or school or sports team, et cetera. And people had a lot of fun with that. We've done a virtual online arts and crafts show where people could share art that they've created and crafts that they've created, and people can get a peek into their homes and again relate with people more on a personal level. So those have been some of the great successes that I'm very proud of the team for. And on the flip side of that, Brooks, one of the greatest challenges is just preventing people from getting burned out. When you go to this environment that we're in now, people tend to work longer. People have fewer social interactions. You're not going down to the cafeteria for lunch. You are probably just walking into your kitchen real quick and getting some lunch and coming back. You're not moving around as much throughout the day. You're not walking in from a parking lot. So physically, your body has to adjust. And it's very easy to lose track of time when you're just sitting in your home office. Couple that with some people having kids and pets, et cetera, it can be very tough. So, the greatest challenge is, making sure people take time for themselves, making sure people find things to do outside of work so that they don't get burned out.
It's great. It takes intentionality when you're not all physically together, doesn't it?
It's very hard. And, personally, I've first few weeks, I was in this mode headed to burnout myself. And I had to start doing things like putting on my calendar, time to stretch. I am one that's not used to sitting a lot, and I was sitting a lot more, and my body was starting to be affected by it. So I had to be very intentional. Now I have slots on my calendar for me to stretch.
Well, good. I should probably do the same, because I find myself having to get up and move around when you suddenly realize your back can't move in its normal fashion after you've been sitting in a position. Listen, I want to shift gears a little bit. There's been a lot of attention around the combination now of IBM and Red Hat. Red Hat's a North Carolina company that got started here and grew into becoming a very large player. Now with the IBM Red Hat combination, there's the whole issue of how do you merge two companies, two cultures, two teams, and even two areas of or multiple areas of work and expertise. So what can you share with us just at a very high level about the merger, what it means for your customers, for shareholders, and just in general?
Yeah, I'll first start off as I am a North Carolina native. Grew up here in North Carolina, grew up in Fayetteville, moved to Raleigh for school and never left. So for me, it is very, very exciting. I'm very proud to see a company that started right here in our own backyard, Red Hat, grow to be the leader in the open source space. It's just a phenomenal story. And just as a citizen, I'm very proud. And when you think about Red Hat and IBM together, really joining forces really gives us the opportunity to provide a greater level of scale. We bring to bear a global enterprise spanning over 170 countries, with a massive sales force and various capabilities of our own, and that accelerates the impact of open source. Is just the basis for digital transformation and bringing Red Hat to an even larger audience. And we're able to do this while preserving Red Hat's own unique culture. I saw a lot written about what will happen to the Red Hat culture. I think now we're seeing that Red Hat culture has been preserved, and we are seeing that we're better together. The results show 20% growth in the Red Hat business. Just in the last quarter. So I do think that, we are trying to do something special here. I believe that, for our clients, it should show that IBM's committed to really enabling the hybrid multi-cloud for the enterprise, and that we are still prioritizing the use of Red Hat technology across multiple clouds, whether it's IBM or anybody else, your vendor of choice. So it's just a strong statement to show that we support open source. We always have, and we support open source technology wherever it runs. We allow it to scale, and have significant impacts within enterprise settings all across the world. And then last but not least, just so happy to see the success of the company, see the success of Jim Whitehurst. He's been such a great leader and done so many great things, and such a humble person. Seeing him become now our IBM president, it's just a tremendous accomplishment. And that local tie is just something that makes me proud, and I'm sure makes everybody involved in Red Hat and IBM coming together very proud.
Yes, it certainly is great. I think it's great for our state. People are increasingly have reason to associate North Carolina with tech leadership. It's just one more prominent example of that.
Exactly.
So, speaking of prominent, within the NC Tech organization, IBM has been a tremendous partner over the years. You all have been our presenting sponsor of our annual State of Technology conference, I guess 11 years now or so and running. This year, we've moved that event from what would have been a spring in-person conference, as it normally has been, to a late summer virtual conference. We'll be going live with that information here soon. But talk a little bit about your day job. You have multiple hats you wear. Site leader is not the only one, even though it might be the most visible to other people. But our topic this year will be data as the new natural resource at the conference. And your day job is to work in the Chief Data Office. So share a little bit about why data is so important to today's business generally, and also some of the work that's exciting you within the IBM world in this area today.
Yeah, it does excite me. I love being involved in data. But, data is the new natural resource. It's not a trend. It's not a fad. It is here to stay, and it should be the basis of all decision making. And I think our current situation with the pandemic shows the value of data. All of the decisions that we make should have their roots in data, and that means we have to find good data. We have to be able to make sure our data has good quality. We have to make sure we expose data. I think it can help us through things on one end of the spectrum, like a global pandemic, and the other end of the spectrum, like reform and police reform. So to me, data is very important. I've always said that insights from data are 10 times more valuable than insights from intuition. And, my day job, you mentioned, I just so happen to help build and drive the adoption of our own enterprise data platform. We serve over 100,000 IBMers every day. We do everything from helping analysts and data scientists find the information they need in real time so they can deliver insights, to helping applications have the data that they need to help our teams make better decisions. So it's a fun role. I really enjoy it, and I really like the opportunities that are presented as you try to transform a company like IBM with its unique history. And using data at the core of that transformation is just that excites me.
Well, it's good to be excited about what you do, and you have no shortage of things to do. So that's awesome. Listen, with the governor having announced we're now into the second phase of the state's reopening, there will be a third phase before there is a full reopening. We've had some alarming statistics in the last few days where it's not just that cases are going up in COVID-19. You would expect that with increased testing. The concern is we've gone up to 10% infection rate from what had been around 7 for a long time. That's concerning. Hospitalizations today, was just announced on the wire, have hit another record day of hospitalizations. That's several days in a row of that. And the governor is having to contemplate whether or not to extend the phase that we're in or even go backward. That's a daunting consideration that he's got to take into account. But in the midst of all of that, people like you are having to determine what the return to office looks like. And so can you share anything that you're able to share about IBM strategy generally, and for this site maybe in particular, on how you expect to return people to office? And I'll just throw a little twist into this. IBM for a long time had been a very heavy work remote culture. Under the previous CEO, that had swung heavily back the other way in some ways to coming back into the office. A lot of people had to make a choice even between keeping their job or coming back in the office if they were some distance from that base office. And now here we are, as you said, in 24 hours, we had to go completely the other direction again. What does that look like in the new world?
Yeah, look, you mentioned the numbers, and with data being my focus in my job, I'm all about the numbers too. So we are letting the data guide our decisions. Right now we have just essential employees accessing the site that physically have to be there to complete their task. Everybody else is working from home. We are approaching this in waves. We have gone from sort of what we would call wave zero, where everything's locked down, very strong government regulations, to wave one, where everything's not locked down. The government regulations have eased, but also we look at one of the factors for entering various waves is the numbers. And so we look at the infection rate over the past 15 days and seeing if that is doubling. So currently we're in wave one, but as you mentioned up top, I look at the numbers every day. We are quickly going to be back to what is wave zero if the current trend continues. I was looking at, most of the time I'm looking at daily, but I was just looking at week recently. And a few weeks ago, just before Memorial Day, we were in the single digits, week to week change. After Memorial Day, we're in the double digits. And as days go on, we've gotten into the high teens, now into the high 20s. So I do think we will probably be pivoting back to wave zero. That being said, at some point, we will get to a point where, we will be able to allow some people in office, and we'll take a conservative approach. One, we'll look to do this not in the normal fashion where everybody just comes in. We'll look to do it in a fashion where we look for short-term business outcomes that can be measured. So things like I need to bring a team together to work on releasing product, passing an audit, et cetera, something like that. And we'll have dedicated space for those teams where we can do a better job of contact tracing. It'll be temporary, and we'll reconfigure the workspace, distance desk, et cetera. Wearing a mask on IBM premises is a policy now, so we will have that. We are also, we have self-screening for things like temperature, who you've been in contact with, and where you've potentially traveled. But we're also looking at evaluating how we can do testing at the work right now. We haven't rolled that out, but we're looking to see if we can do some level of testing for active virus and both antibodies as well. So that's some of the things we're looking at, Brooks. But I do fear that we will probably be taking a step back before we take a step forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations of all sizes are going to have to carefully navigate all of that. It really does depend on the nature of your workforce and the nature of your work and what can be done remotely and what cannot be. Well, let me look out a little bit here as we wrap up. I've been doing a poll of, you've been included in this. We've had about 300 people who are members of our board of directors, members of our board of advisors, site leaders of big tech hubs like you, and a select group of tech CEOs. And we've been asking them a series of 8 or 9 questions since the end of March, twice a month, and just to see the trends now of the shift in sentiment on some of those questions. Some of the questions are about their own organization. Are you still hiring? Are you not hiring? Are you laying off? Or have you seen an increase in demand for your business, or a decrease, or neutral? And then some of the questions are predictive. What month do you anticipate that in-person meetings and events will start to happen more regularly? What month do you anticipate that the economy will start to show measurable improvement? And then what type of rebound do you expect to see? Will it be a steep decline followed by a steep improvement in the economy? Will it be more of a bottoming out and then eventually an improvement? Will we have a mini recovery followed by maybe another downturn if there is a second wave, let's say, in the winter of the virus, and then a more permanent recovery after that? Well, lots of different ways to look at this. So I'm going to give you a chance to give your crystal ball. What do you think on some of those questions on, when do you see IBM allowing for employees to go to outside meetings and events? When do you anticipate seeing customer meetings starting to happen in person? And when do you see the economy starting to begin a more steady rebound?
Yeah, I laugh because I've taken that poll, Brooks, every time you issue it, and I believe my answers change a little bit every time as I get more data, as we look at different models, et cetera. So if I had a crystal ball, I probably would try to use it to figure out who's the next set of lottery numbers or something like that. Because my ability to predict this volatile and uncertain time is wildly inaccurate. But so it's very hard for me to predict what will happen. I'll just say we follow the data, and I do let the data be the guide. As I said previously, I fear some stepping back in terms of the number of cases and the burden on our healthcare systems. I fear that's going to be the case, which then would say you would have an economic recovery that would be more W in shape rather than a U or a V. So if as a betting man, that's probably what I would bet on, is more of a W-shaped economic outlook here. But again, I couldn't have predicted all the various things that were going to happen in 2020. And then locally, one of the things I think about all the time is we've had a healthcare crisis with COVID-19. We've had a social crisis with the murders of George Floyd and others, and the outrage in the community. And I fear for us locally, because now we've entered what could be a very difficult hurricane season. So locally, I am fearful. And when the numbers improve, I have cautious optimism. So that's sort of how I look at it, and I will follow the numbers and let the numbers and the data be my guide to decision making.
Well, that's why you're smarter than me. I will tell you that we're going to add a bonus question, or not really, I guess, a bonus question, but a new question to the poll that will be taken on the 15th of June, which will be Monday. And there'll be a final. This particular poll series began at the end of March, at the very beginning of all this COVID-19 impact, and we decided we would run it in April, May, and June. So the poll will conclude at the end of June. Then we're probably going to pivot to more of a monthly poll of tech leaders. It might even be a different mix of respondents who are primarily tech leaders, with a set of core questions that just would be interesting to the community, to the public, and to each other ongoing, irrespective of COVID-19, and the ability to add timely questions maybe to that as time moves on. But with the poll we've been doing, we've kept it consistent. But I have a colleague in another state who took our idea and ran with it and has their own poll going with their tech association. And they threw in a new question this time, which I like, so we're going to do it too. And it's essentially, if someone gave you a pair of tickets to an event or activity that you really would ordinarily want to go to, whether it's a sporting event for your favorite team, a concert of a band you love, or an orchestra, a gala or reception that was important to you, et cetera, what's the first month you would feel comfortable going? Would it be July? And then, or a couple of the options are going to be not till 2021 or not until a vaccine. But we're interested in finding out, there's a subset of the public, even professionals, who are having to be careful about company policies. There's a subset that are very anxious to get back out there and engage with people. And to the extent they can feel comfortable that their host is doing the right things, they might be willing to do it. So it'll be interesting to see what that feedback looks like. So keep an eye out for that.
I will. And I'll just say, as an extrovert myself, it does pay me to spend pretty much all my time sitting at home and not being around people. So I get it.
We're at the end of our time. There actually was a question that popped in, and it's a very good one, so I'm going to take host license and go an extra minute without keeping you beyond your time much.
Sure.
One of the questions in our poll, in fact, it's the last question in our poll, it's what has been the biggest challenge in the last couple of weeks for you? And we make that an open-ended answer, and it's been interesting to see what the trends are or the themes are. Recently, in the last couple of iterations of this poll, something that has popped up more frequently is concern about the mental well-being and mental health of employees, given the anxiety, given the isolation, given the uncertainty about their jobs and their company. And someone has asked this question, what has IBM done for their employees in terms of discussions about their mental health during this crisis, and any thoughts about how that might be an ongoing area of concern and action for the company?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I alluded to a little bit of worrying about burnout, but at the core of burnout is mental health. We've had a focus on mental health for many years. We offer professional assistance through counseling for outside counseling that's confidential to all of our employees that they can use at any time. We have also collected several mental health resources that just recently I shared with our employees, and we encourage also our leaders, our team leaders, our managers to make sure they understand some of the signs of potential mental health, so that we can get people the help they need. Because sometimes, unfortunately, when it comes to mental health, you don't see the signs until too late. And then that can result in tragedy, which is something that nobody wants to see. And then I just say that point is so accurate, because not only do you have to deal with all of your personal problems and your uncertainties about work, and then you're having to do a new daily routine. On top of that, you anytime you turn on the news, you're seeing something negative. And all of that combined on anybody is just a huge burden. So, we encourage people to look for the signs. We encourage people to get help. We offer resources. I know a lot of other employers in North Carolina do the same thing. But it is something I think that we got to figure out how we can even go the next step, because mental health is just as important as physical health. And I think 2020 is, showing us that that is definitely true.
Well, to your point, not only is it something that you don't always notice the signs of until too late, it's something that rarely does the person affected ask for help about.
Yes.
Certainly not. Well, Tim, this is a very wide-ranging and great conversation. You're a great friend to NC Tech, and I'm proud to call you a friend as well. Thank you for making your time available. I know that you are high in demand internally and elsewhere. You probably had more than your fill of webinars and web discussions, but at least you have a comfortable place to do it in, from what I can see.
Well, look, like I said, I love our community. I love our focus on technology. I love the work you and your team are doing. So I was thrilled when you asked me to do this, and you can count on my help anytime.
Well, you're great to say that. And I just want to say to our audience that before we adjourn, I want to remind you to check our site for updated and new offerings at nctech.org/events. You'll find there a lineup of over a dozen future NC Tech Talks with various leaders. We have quite a mix, so I encourage you to take a look. Thank you again to Walk West for sponsoring today's session, to Cisco for being our video partner, and of course to Tim Humphrey for your time and expertise today. And thanks to all of our viewers for joining us today.
All right. Thank you.